Welcome to the Golf Report podcast. I'm joined by Grace Williams, a professional golfer. Grace, thanks for your time and how are things going?
Hi, things are going good. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you're currently in Australia. Just tell me about, being in Australia and it being summertime there and just how things are going, golf-wise for you.
Things are great here. I joined the WPGA here, which is the Australian circuit, and
Okay.
that's been really good so far. We're about to start I guess, official Australian tour series in January. So we'll be traveling all around Australia. There's a couple of tournaments that like combine both men and women. It's called the
Okay.
WebEx series. So they play basically two men and a woman in like a group, and then they all play for the same prize money. It's just different tees, but that's
Mhm.
going to be a really cool experience that's coming up and everything. But summertime here is always great. Perfect weather, perfect
Mhm.
golf. Couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah, so you mentioned to me you were playing in some tournaments, recently. Just tell me about some of
Yeah.
the tournaments you've been playing in, and just how those have been going.
So I recently just played in the New South Wales qualifying events.
Okay.
Um, they were pretty good. We went to some regional areas, specifically like Dubbo and Bathurst, which are just kind of like smaller country towns in Australia. And it was definitely an eye-opening experience just to play courses that aren't like super well known or like playable a lot. And it was just a good experience to get out and play against like some of the girls that I'm going to be playing against in the future and stuff like that.
Yeah. Just tell me about some of the tournaments you do get to play in, when you go to back home to Australia. Or just some tournaments you enjoy getting to play in, when you get to go to Australia.
Yeah, there's a Australian Open is a really good one that I'll get to play next year, hopefully. It's played down in Victoria mainly. It's just basically like the top guys and girls in Australia that play actually the same courses and play for the exact same money, which is
Mhm.
really good and like moving forward and like both female and male competition, being able to like win the same money instead of having like that kind of like price gap. That and then like honestly, also the WebEx series I'm really excited for because you get to put yourself up against like some of the best men in Australia, and you just get to see like where your game like ranks against them. So it's always good competition to be able to rank yourself against the men and everything.
Mhm. Yeah, so you mentioned you get to play with the men. So just what's it like getting to play with the men and how is the experience, when you do get to play with the men? Like do you learn a lot, playing with the
Yeah,
men? Just, how is that for you?
you definitely do get to learn a lot. The men are very serious, in my opinion. I feel like they take the game and like the whole round a little more like competitively because in like the women's field, I feel like everyone's just having a good old like little chit chat with each other, and all the men are just like serious and like thinking. But it's always good to see like how they like play around the course and manage the course, just because they hit it obviously like a lot further than we do. So it's always good to see like how they play compared to like how we would play because we also play a lot more like conservatively, I guess you
Mhm.
could say, whereas they're just like, oh, I see a pin, like I'm gonna go straight at the pin instead of like,
Mhm.
oh, I should lay up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, you're from Australia and, you went to school, college in the US and, you played some tournaments, in the US, as a professional golfer. So just tell me, how often do you get to go back to Australia? And right now, it's the US, it's winter in the US, but it's summer there in Australia. So if in the US is winter, do you go to Australia or, how does it work for you in terms of, how often do you get to go to Australia? And, do you mostly stay in Australia over the US? Just tell me, where you mostly based yourself out of.
At the moment, I'm kind of doing like 6 months here, 6 months there,
Okay.
just because it's like the Australian season kind of goes from like mid to late November to like March, late March, early April. And then obviously like the US tour starts kind of like late March, early April. So it kind of matches up well when you like think about it because I'll go from like the US in like March down to like maybe like September, August,
Mhm.
depending on like when tournaments have their schedules. And then I'll come back home and I'll have like maybe a month or two off or like be able to like finally get back into practice and then I'll start playing the Australian tour. So it all kind of works out well when you think about it.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you're from Queensland, Australia, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Just tell me, is that where you stay, when you go to Australia?
Yeah, I live and play in the Gold Coast,
Okay.
which is I guess like it's like down the very bottom east side of Queensland. So it's like basically bordering New South Wales. So it's like you get the best of like getting able to go down to New South Wales and like not being too far to play from golf courses down there, and then like also having the opportunity to go up to like the Sunshine Coast, which is
Mhm.
like 2 hours north of from where I'm from, and they're just like two completely different types of golf. So
Okay.
it's always a good experience to play in like a wide range of areas.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about, golf in Australia? How is golf in Australia? Tell me, how are the courses? And what are some of the courses, you either get to play at or some of the courses, you really enjoy playing at, in Australia?
Yeah, yeah. So my home club is Southport Golf Club.
Okay.
It's very nice. We have
Mhm.
a pro-am that gets played there every year, which is always a good thing. There's a lot of we have a lot of pros and stuff that come play in that. But like the courses here are just so nice. Like we have mainly Bermuda grass, or in Queensland we have mainly Bermuda grass, but also the courses are a lot tighter and stuff like that. But I was actually talking to my coach yesterday about it, about like American golf compared to like Australian golf, and we were just talking about how like in Australia, like we have a lot of wind, so like we generally like to play like a low like kind of ball flight, whereas compared to like America, like I feel like a lot of the time, a lot of the courses get set up to where it's like, oh, you just got to hit it far and hit it straight.
Mhm.
So it's always good to like come back, play it like a really conservative, but like also you have to hit it straight and low here and have a good all round game. And then going back to America and like you're like, oh yeah, like I get a chance to like fully hit the ball now. So
Yeah.
it's always good. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of equipment, like I know a lot of times, golfers, like when they go to the British Open, they'll switch out their equipment, like, maybe take out a hybrid and put in, a long iron. For you, going
Mm-hmm.
from the US to Australia, do you make any differences, with your game or with your equipment or just anything change, or is it mostly, pretty, much the same from the US to Australia for you in terms of just your game or your equipment?
My game here, I generally do play. I tend to take more like 3 woods and like pins off the tee
Okay.
just to keep it in play and off the fairway. Whereas like in the US, I take more mainly drivers and everything like that. I did actually change my driver head from a Rogue in the US to now here the Smoke, the AI Smoke. That's the only
Okay.
change I could think of that I actually made to my clubs recently, but pretty much just the same.
Yeah, and then I know, you go even in the US, you play in different places. They have different grass or different greens. Just how has that adjustment been for you? Adjusting to, US courses and Australia courses and playing different, types of courses. Different grass, different greens. How has that adjustment been for you?
It's been pretty good, changing from going from like a bent type of grass to like Bermuda is definitely an interesting change. The club gets a little more stuck here, I guess, when you go through the ball, whereas like Bermuda's like really, I mean, bent's like really nice and like you just get through the ball, but it's been good. Like the greens are definitely something that you have to look out for because like Bermuda grass, obviously you get more grain with the ball, and bent grass, you have more of a true putt. But the adjustments come along and it's going to be work in progress, but at the end of the day, it's going to be good.
Yeah, and then finally about the difference between Australia and US. What are some one main difference, or what are some of the differences you've experienced between US golf and Australia golf? It can just
I
be
feel like
the courses or just anything you've experienced.
I definitely think the courses and the wildlife here you have to look out for.
Okay.
There's also kangaroos on the course out here, so you kind of have to be wary of that and just play a little more strategically around the courses here. And then in
Mm.
America, like I feel like you really do have the chance to be able to just go at the pins and have a really low round.
Yeah. So you mentioned you have a coach, there in Australia. So, just tell me, how does it work, when you're in the US, how does that work, getting coaching, from your coach? Like, do you meet virtually or do you have a coach in the US? Just how does that work, for you?
I did have a coach in the US. His name was Derek Hopper. He was out of Houston, Texas.
Okay.
But then I also work with Ben Campbell here, who's a really good coach, who I might stick with because I used to work with Australian coach when I first started college golf, and we just did like virtual things. Like I would send him videos, and he would send me like videos back explaining like what I had to do and stuff like that, which works pretty well. But eventually, it just got too hard. But I think moving forward, I'm going to stick with Ben just
Hmm.
because I like his style of coaching and everything. He's helped me a lot recently.
Yeah. So do you mostly just get coaching when you're in Australia, or do you get coaching both, when you're in Australia and when you're in the US? How does that, work out for you? Do you get coaching both places, or just, when you're back home?
Mainly just when I'm back home. Like if I need
Mhm.
someone to like look at something in my swing, I'll find someone in the US. But if not, then I'll just send Ben a video and be like, "Hey, what's up?" And he'll take a look at it straight away and send me back some info that I need.
Yeah. And you mentioned Texas. Is that where, you live and where you base yourself out of in Texas? And then just tell me
I
about,
do.
when you're in, Texas, just tell me about some of the, courses you play and, practice at.
Yeah, so I basically base myself in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
It's where my best friend lives, and I live with her family, which is really good for me because it gives me a good base and everything. But I play Houston National, which is in Cypress, Texas, which is just outside of Houston, I guess you could say, in like the suburbs. But I mainly play around there. They have two good courses. They have Sterling, which is a private course, and then they have obviously Houston National, which is a public course, but they have everything I need. And
Mhm.
then I do like to go around and play a couple of the courses like Kingwood and Tour 18 and everything like that, which is always a good experience.
Oh yeah, Tour 18, I think I've heard that. Doesn't it have like
Yeah.
replica holes of like, famous courses?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of that course. So let's get into your start in golf. You're obviously from Australia. Just tell me about, growing up in Australia and just how you got started playing golf.
So I didn't actually start playing golf till I was about 14. I
Okay.
had a friend that played golf and she had taken me along to a lesson, like a group lesson, and on like a Saturday, and I was like, "Oh, I actually like this. Maybe I should change sports." And so just kind of like from then I was able to like get into it. My dad obviously plays, but he tried to get me into it and I was just like, "No, I don't like this with him." So, but she was a good influence and finally got me into golf. I just continued to progress and I eventually fell in love with the sport enough to take it overseas and pursue it professionally and everything like that.
Yeah. Did you grow up, playing other sports? And you said you started playing at age 14. So how was it, for you, probably starting later than other junior golfers who you grew up, playing with?
Yeah, so I grew up playing netball and AFL, which are two very iconic Australian sports.
You said netball.
Um, yeah, it's like
Can you?
basketball, but like you can't move with the ball.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't know, it's like interesting because it's like obviously a lot of other girls have like started when they were younger, and you can kind of tell because it's just like they have a lot more, I guess, like experience. You can kind of tell with a lot of things, and like they have a lot more connections. But I mean, you work hard, and obviously the outcomes come. So you just got to keep putting in the work, and I feel like that's worked out for me. So got to work hard to get to the places you want to be.
Yeah. So I was reading, you had a very good, junior amateur career, growing up in Australia. So just tell me about, your junior golf career, growing up, playing golf in Australia and just some courses you grew up playing, junior golf, and uh, playing junior golf in Australia.
Yeah. So my junior crew was pretty good. There wasn't many girls playing around, but there were a couple of good girls. We played a lot of courses, obviously in Queensland. I remember traveling up to the Sunshine Coast a lot to play like Pelican Waters and everything like that. But then I also got the chance just before I went to college to go like all the way around Australia and play a lot of like the junior amateurs in the different states and everything, which was super fun. I remember playing like the Oz Amateur over in like Royal Fremantle and Perth, WA, which was a very fun experience because my brother lives over there and got to spend time with him and his family and just remember having a great time over
Yeah. So you went to Hillcrest Christian College. You were a two-time Sport Woman of the Year honoree. So just, tell me about going to Hillcrest Christian College and how that was for you.
Oh yeah, it was a great experience. The principal was actually a family friend of ours, so that's the main reason I went there. But it was a very heavily basketball school. Like we had a bunch of kids go to the US to play basketball from the school. So like everyone knew that like the athletes kind of there were there to like with a purpose and obviously to have high and successful careers. So it was really good. They were really supportive when I had tournaments or like had to go to practice early or something like that and had to leave school. They were all super supportive and I'm really appreciative of that.
Yeah. So growing up, did you mostly play in Australia? Did you ever get to go to the US? I know. it said you played in the IJGA World Junior Championship. So just tell me, did you ever get to go to the US before, going to college in the US, or did you mostly just play in Australia growing up?
So we had been to the US a bunch of
Mhm.
times, just mainly on
Okay.
vacation and everything like that. But there was that one time that I played in the US and it was a great time.
Hmm.
But other than that, I didn't really get the chance to leave Australia. I mean, I played a couple of times in New Zealand just because it's super close and everything. But then again, they didn't have a bunch of tournaments growing up for amateurs. So Australia was mainly it for me.
Okay. So you attended Rogers State, University, but it also says you were recruited by several other schools. You were recruited by Rogers State. It says Rutgers, Illinois, and Harvard. So just tell me about, how the recruiting process worked for you, being from Australia, and just, how did you decide that you knew you wanted to go to school, in the US?
I guess there was kind of an ideology about the US and like being able to go to college there. So that really
Yeah.
excited me and be able to like leave home and kind of experience like the adult life by myself at an early age was a really good experience.
Hmm.
But recruiting in Australia was it was hard at the time because obviously like the college coach is like kind of taking a risk on you unless they like see you play in person. So it's kind of hard to get like a school to like commit to like I guess like a product they haven't seen.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, if for me, I just remember keeping a bunch of coaches updated with like how I was playing, sending them swing videos and everything like that. And obviously, like it worked out in the end, which was good for me. But like I know there's like a bunch of girls now that are going to big schools, so obviously it's like paid off well for like the future and everything like that.
Yeah. So you're recruited by Harvard, so I'm sure, for you, academics were, you're probably pretty good at academics. Let's talk about, your academics and how, they were growing up. Obviously you're recruited by Harvard, so I'm sure your academics were pretty good, but just tell me about that for you.
Yeah, so school in Australia was really really hard.
Okay.
Like it was like compared to the US, I just think
Mm.
like it was just so much more challenging. And that's like a reason I didn't go to Harvard, just because like I didn't have like the best academics growing up. And I think they required like a 3.8, and I think I had like a 3.0 or something like that. So it wasn't bad, but
Okay.
like at the end of the time, it was like kind of a decision whether I wanted to be pushed academically or whether I really wanted to focus on golf. And I kind of chose golf over
Yeah.
academics a little more than everything.
Yeah. So it says, you were a three-time regional team winner from 2016 to 2018 at Hillcrest Christian College. So just, tell me about your high school time and just, being a regional team winner, three times and how that was for you.
Yeah, yeah, it was a good experience.
Hmm.
We didn't actually, so in Australia, like we don't actually have golf teams at our high schools.
Okay.
We go to, it's kind of like a sports team, but it's not associated directly with the high school. So you go
Okay.
to like a tryout and you get selected. And I was kind of the South Coast team. And then there's
Hmm.
like other regions in the state that play. But that was really fun experience. Like we got to play with like a bunch of good juniors from the Gold Coast and around the area and traveled to like I think the first year we traveled all the way up to like Rockhampton, which is like a 6 hour drive north from us. And then like the next year we got to go to Cairns, which is like a 3.5, 4 hour flight up north from us. So it was a really good experience. It was great and I couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah, and another notable accomplishment about like your junior amateur career. It says you won the ACT Amateur State Individual Championship. So can you just tell me about anything you remember from this tournament and just what it was like to win this tournament?
Yeah, so ACT is the Australian Capital Territory. So
Okay.
it's one of our states here. That was a really good tournament. We played at Royal Canberra, which is, I guess, the state capital of Australia. And it's like
Mhm.
the main golf course in the ACT. It was really good. I just remember walking down like the 18th on the final day and I was like, I'm gonna win this. But I had my
Yeah.
dad on the bag, and he was just like, "You just gonna stay calm and everything like that." And I was like, "Okay, like I'll try my best." But it ended up bit turning out right for me, so it was good.
Yeah. So you attended Rogers State University. So just, first off, what drew you initially to Rogers State University?
Initially, I really liked Coach Hocut.
Hmm.
She was great. She was very good at getting to know me personally. She was very good at talking and like obviously getting to know my family and representing the university well.
Mhm. Yeah. So going from, Australia to the US for school, just how was the transition for you? What were some differences that you noticed, from Australia to the US? And just how did you navigate, going, all the way from Australia to the US, going to school at Rogers State and, Oklahoma. How was that transition for you?
It was a very interesting transition. I feel like the
Hmm.
whole schooling system is different and like how we kind of work things. It's like, oh, like I had like only two classes in a day and then the rest of the day I didn't have anything, which is like obviously very weird because like in high school, like you go from like going to school all day to only having like a class or two a day. And so that
Hmm.
was interesting. But I remember getting off the plane when I first arrived in America, and the border security guy was just like, "Oh, like, what are you here for?" I was like, "Oh, school." And he's like, "Oh, that's exciting. Are you excited?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm excited." And he was
Hmm.
just like, "All right, have a good time." Didn't mention anything. So it was a very chill and relaxing environment, but it was also like a very welcoming environment.
Yeah. So what were some other differences you noticed between, school in Australia, and school in the US? And, you mentioned, like, for example, you would only have like two classes, in a day. So how did you navigate, balancing your time, only having a few classes in a day? Like, would you spend it, practicing golf or doing other things? How did you navigate, some of the differences you experienced in the schooling in the US?
Yeah, I feel like for my first 2 years, Coach Hoka had us doing like a lot of extra activities and everything. So not
Hmm.
only did I have school and like homework, and I was trying to figure that out, but I also did want to go out and practice a bunch. But then we would also have like community service and everything like that, which was good because I was able to get out and like meet people in the community and make connections everywhere. So that was good. And then like other than that, like I was just out on the golf course. I would walk to the golf course because it was right down the road if I couldn't get a
Hmm.
ride
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Just getting out there as much as I possibly could and improving my game.
Yeah. So you spent about 1 year at Rogers State and then you transferred over to Utah Tech. Just tell me about how was your time at Rogers State and then just tell me, how was the transferring, how was that, for you and then what drew you to Utah Tech?
Yeah, so it was interesting because the time that I transferred, it was during COVID.
Okay.
So obviously, like we didn't have, or I didn't have like a lot of scores or anything like that. But my time at Roger State, I had a great time. Like, not necessarily saying it was a school for me, but the time that I did spend there, like, I have no complaints. Like, it was a great school, and I have no complaints about it at all. And like, I'm sure Coach Hokut is making a great team now and everything like that. And I hope she still recruits good girls and to grow the program and have success. But Utah Tech, that's my favorite school. They have 10 courses within like 20 minutes of the campus. It's
Okay.
great scenery everywhere. Um, Coach Stookie or Coach Orth now, it was great. She was very welcoming. She was very successful and she knew what she wanted and she knew how to grow her program. And I'm grateful that she was able to pick me up along the way and bring me in and had a great team and everything. And she continues to grow the program there. And obviously, transitioning from a D2 to a D1 was a new like era, I guess. And it was great because like the school was growing, the golf team was growing, the community was growing, and overall it was just a good school for me.
Yeah. So you had a lot of change, going on at the time. COVID was happening in the US. Were transferring schools, going to a new state, going from, going to school in Oklahoma to now Utah. So just tell me about, all that. How did you navigate that? And how did that all work out for you, being an international student yourself, navigating, transferring, COVID happening, just, how did you navigate all that and how was that for you?
It was definitely an interesting time of the year. I was stuck in the US for about 2.5, 3 years without being able to go home
Yeah.
just because of like COVID restrictions and like having to get like a vaccine or like having restrictions placed on Australia. Like if you came into Australia, like you couldn't leave Australia.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, but I was lucky enough to have a car with me. So I kind of just drove from Oklahoma down to Houston. I'd spent like a couple summers in Houston and then eventually just drove from Houston to Utah, which was great. Like it was a long drive. It was probably about 27 hours or something like that. But you got to drive through like we got to stop on the way and see like the Grand Canyon and everything like that. But it was pretty good. Like I wouldn't like regret anything that I did or anything.
Mhm.
Um, like it was a very big, I guess, learning curve in my life and being able to like kind of grow up a little more and like having to like navigate a whole new country by myself was definitely an interesting experience, but I'm very grateful for it happening.
Yeah, and how do you feel like, you mentioned navigating, transition to a whole new country, how do you feel like you navigated that transition, going from Australia to the US? And I'm assuming your family was still back in Australia. So just how difficult was it,
Yeah.
being away from your family in Australia, while you went to school in the US? How was that?
It was difficult at some
Mhm.
times, especially when like people would like have birthdays and stuff like that. And like I couldn't be here for like my dad's 55th or so, like birthday and stuff like that. So it's kind
Yeah.
of hard. But at the end, like they came over to see me a good couple of times, which was really good. And my dad came over during COVID to spend Christmas with me. So he kind of risked it for the biscuit, but
Mhm.
you know, it was good. But no, it's definitely an interesting challenge as an international student. You kind of have to grow up kind of quickly and like be wary of like your situations and be smart in the things you do. And like obviously you got to make good friends that will help you support you, especially in the US.
Yeah.
But yeah, I made some really good friends that have helped me throughout my time in the US.
Yeah. So you went to school at Utah Tech. Utah obviously, is known for it has, the cold, the winter, the snow. So how was that for you, navigating, the cold and the winter? Because I'm sure probably growing up in Australia, you probably never even had, experienced snow before. So how was that for you? Just
Yeah,
navigating the winters, the cold, and even probably seeing snow for the first time. How was that for you, going to school in Utah?
it was actually great. So like in St. George, we were at like lower elevation, so we didn't really get snow
Okay.
too much. Like we got snow like 40 minutes from us,
Okay.
which was really funny. And like there was like a mountain that you could see snow and stuff like that, which was really cool. And I think we got like snow once a year, but it never like stuck or anything like that, which was fun. But like I had a roommate from Colorado, and like any question I had about the snow or like driving in cold weather, I would ring her up and be like, hey, like how do I do this? And she's like, you just gotta drive. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was a good experience though.
Yeah, and how was it for you, dealing with the cold in Utah? Did you feel like you dealt with it well? Because I grew up in Arizona, where it was pretty warm and even,
Mm-hmm.
just, dealing with the cold now here in, Connecticut, where it gets, there's snow and, it's in, like the 20s, the 10s, things like that. I had to navigate, dealing with the cold. So how did you navigate, the winter weather and the cold just in, Utah?
I definitely bought a lot of layers.
Yeah,
I went out and bought like thermal gear and everything like that. I even ended up buying like one of those little electronic hand warmers just to stick in my pockets.
yeah,
I think I ended up also buying like a whole box from Costco of like the hand warmers that you like shake and like heat up. So
hmm
that's really how I managed it. But it was definitely an eye opener. I definitely had to buy some beanies too. And like a lot of hoodies I came back with that I can't really wear while I'm in Australia because it's just too hot.
yeah.
But it was fun. It was a good experience. I love the cold now, kind of. I mean, I prefer the heat, but the cold's always fun.
Yeah, and then going to school, at Utah Tech, in Utah, would your team, would you get to play outdoors all year round, or were the courses not open all year round in Utah?
Yeah, the course was open all year round in Utah.
So you would play outdoors,
Obviously,
all year round, you and your
yeah,
team?
yeah. We also had a
Okay,
indoor facility that, like,
yeah,
if it was like super cold outside and like coach didn't want us out there for too long, like we would just go to the indoor facility and work in there and on the
hmm
trackman and things like that. So like we kind of had the best of both worlds, where it's like if you wanted to, like you could go play outdoors, but if you didn't want to, like you could just go indoors and play.
yeah. So I grew up in Arizona, obviously where, you can play outdoors all year round. Now I live in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
So something I've learned, is indoor, golf. And, I've, because you can't play all year round, there's about, 3 months where the courses are closed mostly. But for you, you mentioned the indoor, facility you had at Utah Tech. Just tell me about that. And for me, something I've learned from indoor golf is, getting a hit on TrackMans and actually, seeing your numbers. So for you, just what was it like, hitting indoors, hitting on a TrackMan and seeing your numbers, on the screen. Is that something you like? And how was that transition, to indoor golf for you?
I think hitting on the TrackMan indoors was a good indication of like where your golf is going and like how you're
Yeah.
swinging it. Definitely. Um, we used to play like the courses indoors all the time, which I think is really fun also just to see how like things end up. Because I know like sometimes like the TrackMan doesn't pick up things like the way it's meant to be picked up, so it's kind of fun just to see like how shots come out and stuff like that. But it was a good transition. Like I know I think I got a little number happy sometimes,
Okay.
but at the end of the day, just going back outside after being on the TrackMan was always good just to see like how the numbers are like converting to like real life like bull flight and everything like that. So it was good.
Yeah. I asked that previous question because I think once on TV I saw, I believe it was like Matt Fitzpatrick or Luke Donald, one of those guys. They went to school in Chicago, where obviously, you can't play all year round in Chicago. They went to Northwestern. And they were talking about how actually hitting on a TrackMan and seeing their numbers was useful for them because they could tell, this club goes this far. Just, seeing all their data and seeing all their numbers was super beneficial to them in their game. So, you talked about being number happy. Do you think, seeing all that data and hitting on a TrackMan, do you think that was beneficial to you in your game? And had you before college going to Utah, had you hit on a TrackMan and seen your numbers before, or not too much? Just when you work on it with a coach, or how did that work out for you? Have you ever hit on a TrackMan and see your numbers, and was that beneficial to you or not?
Yeah, I think it's beneficial
Mhm.
at first. I think if you do it too much, then you can kind of get into your own head and like
Yeah.
continue thinking about your swing a little too much. But before that, honestly, we didn't have like a whole lot of TrackMan data back here in
Okay.
Australia.
Yeah.
So it was kind of new to me, but like I feel like it was something that I easily picked up and like kind of got used to really quickly.
Yeah. And then just overall, just tell me about how was your experience, at Utah Tech, and just how was your time getting to play at Utah Tech?
The experience was great. We had great teams. All the girls were super nice and like got along really well. The courses we got to play were insane. Like Black Desert is actually where our new facility just opened. So we have like a little like oh it's not little, it's like a big green where like you can chip and putt and everything like that. And they're gonna build like a building that has trackmans and everything in it shortly. But we got to go out and play Black Desert a bunch of times, same with like Sand Hollow and like Green Springs and Coral Canyon. So
Mhm.
I couldn't have asked for like a better environment to be able to go to, and as well as like all the professors were also super supportive with golf, especially because they all
Yeah.
play golf and stuff like that. But the school was great. Everyone was super supportive, super great, and the coach, Coach Suki, Coach Orr, she was
Yeah.
great. Couldn't have asked for a better coach and everything like that. I couldn't ask for a better environment. Really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah. And at Utah Tech, just tell me about, some of the courses, you got to play in Utah, how the courses were for you in Utah. And then I believe your team at Utah Tech, hosted a tournament, a home tournament each year. So tell me about, the home tournament for your team and how that was.
Yeah, the home tournament was great. We played out at Green Springs, which is I
Yeah.
feel like a kind of underrated golf course. Like not many people know about it, but it's a
Mhm.
super great like course for like the local community and everything like that. And they're like super supportive and everything because they're like the closest course to campus. I think it's like a 5 minute drive. But the home tournament we played every year was great. We had a bunch of teams from California, and like we even had Weber State from up north come down a couple of times and stuff like that. So it was a really competitive environment, and it was great.
Yeah. So it says while you were at Utah Tech, you were a business marketing major. You minored in sports communications. So just tell me about, studying business at Utah Tech. How did you decide on that major, and just, how was that for you, getting to major in business?
Yeah. I think marketing is a really interesting aspect of business just because you can kind of pinpoint like how people see ads and like how they perceive ads and whether it's going to sell a product or not sell a product. The professors at Utah Tech for marketing and business were great.
Hmm.
Like we had Chris Brown, who is a entrepreneurship professor. He has real life experience and like actually taught a class as like if you were building your own product and you would have to go up like one night at the end of the semester and like actually like pitch your product to like professors that have like real life experience and that own their own businesses and everything like that. And that's just one class of many that I could just think of that have like real life experience and like great for you and for you to be able to like start your business. A lot of things because I know Utah is actually I think it's like one of the top states for business starters and stuff like that. So it's actually a really good class, and I really enjoyed my time in the business department at Utah Tech.
Yeah. So I see outside of, the college tournaments that you played in at Utah Tech, you also played in the Utah State Amateur. So just tell me about getting to play, tell me about some of the tournaments you played outside of, college, at Utah Tech. And I'm interested to know, when you were at school, would you stay in Utah, like during the summer in the US, or how did that work out for you?
Yeah, so during the summer, I would always, or at least always, try to come home for at least a couple of weeks,
Okay.
and then I would go back during the summer
Okay.
and try and play a couple of tournaments over there. I would stay back in St. George in like an off-campus like apartment type style, which was really good. And then the courses, Utah, the Golf Association, they were really good about like putting on tournaments, especially for amateurs, like the Utah State Am. Not last year, maybe the year before, was good. It was played at Jeremy Ranch, which is a course up in Park City, Utah, which is kind of like a higher elevation. But that was really well ran. All the starters, all the officials, all the people that ran the actual event were great, and they knew you like personally. Like even me, like not being from Utah, they knew me and they knew who I was, and I would always like have a good old chit chat with them and get to know them personally and everything. So it's a really good like community to be able to be a part of and everything like that.
Mhm. Yeah. And what were some of your favorite, memories or moments from getting to play college golf and, getting to attend both Rogers State and Utah Tech?
I think it was one that being able to meet a bunch of different people and kind of see the cultures that are different from like the Midwest to like kind of like the West Coast and like mountain range states. Like being able to like kind of live in like the traditions of like the typical like kind of like southern hospitality and everything like that to then being able to go to like somewhere like Utah and experience like all of the outdoor nature and everything like that. Like Zion was 40 minutes and like Bryce Canyon was like 2 hours and everything like that. So it was really good just to see like how people, I guess, change over the US, but also being accepted into the culture and being able to live kind of like the American dream and everything like that.
Yeah. So now you're currently a professional golfer. So just tell me about, how you ended up, turning professional. How's the transition for you been, going from playing college golf to now being a professional golfer? How's that transition been for you? And just how have you navigated, the transition from, college golf where you have teammates and coaches to now, professional golf where, you play individually and, setting a schedule and all different things, are on your own. How's that transition been for you?
It's been kind of difficult, like going from having a team environment where like you're surrounded by like some of your best friends and everything like that, and like having all your travel and like tournament schedules set for you to being able to go to the professional life where you have to like kind of navigate yourself and like figure out like how the actual system works and everything has been like difficult. But I've had the James Nichols, he's part of the WPGA, he's helped me a lot. He actually reached out to us just before I finished college and asked if I was going to come home and play, and I said yeah. And then he's basically the guy I go to ask any questions that I have. So it's been really good to be able to have someone like that, like help me through like the transition and stuff like that, and like figure out like oh like how does the order of merit work and how does like rankings work in categories. So it's been good. It's been difficult, but it's been good.
Yeah. So just tell me, after college, how did you end up, turning pro? Just tell me about a little bit about your journey to turning, professional after college.
Yeah, I kind of always knew that I wanted to be professional. I was talking to my dad about it, and we
Hmm.
kind of just decided, like, oh, like if we're gonna give it a shot, like, like this time is like the best time to do it because you're kind of at like your prime and everything like that, and like you only live once, and like how often are you gonna be like, oh, like I'm a professional golfer and stuff like that. So it was kind of like a you might as well give it a shot while you have the chance instead of just like going straight into like the business world or like do a job and like just being stuck in that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So I see, you played a few tournaments on the Women's All Pro Tour. Tell me a little bit about, playing those tournaments, how you heard about that tour, and, tell me about any other, professional tournaments you've gotten to play, in the US.
Yeah, so I actually got to play in the Epson Tour event out at Copper Rock, which was a
Okay.
really good experience. I got an exemption into that and as an amateur, and I
Okay.
kind of stayed in as an amateur in that just because it was an exemption from like Utah Tech and everything like that. But I heard about the Women's All Pro Tour through a friend of mine, Jess Whitting, and I heard that it was a good stage into running into like the Epson and getting a chance to go to like stage two of qualifying for the LPGA. So I just wanted to give it a shot and everything like that. But yeah, that's kind of how I've heard about it and everything. But I also am now going to go play the WPGA, which is also has a good events and stuff like that. So I'm
Mhm.
excited for that future to come along sooner than later.
Yeah. Playing the Epson Tour as an amateur, just, tell me about that experience. What did you learn from getting to play on the Epson Tour? That's the minor league, for the LPGA Tour. So just tell me about your experience playing that tournament, what you learned, from getting to playing that Epson Tour tournament, especially, in Utah, where you went to school. Just, how special was that experience and what did you learn, from that tournament?
Yeah, it was a super special experience. I had a
Mhm.
lot of people come out and support me, which was great.
Yeah.
I just kind of learned that one, you kind of have to do your due diligence about the course and about everything, and be prepared to be able to play in like all types of weather and everything like that. And like two, just like you just gotta really like keep thinking to yourself, but not get like kind of nervous and like overwhelmed by it all. Because at the end of the day, it's just a game.
Hmm.
And I feel like, especially like the first day that I played it, and I was like super nervous and super worried about my score and like what people would think of me if I didn't play well. But then the second day, I kind of just went out there and was like, well, at the end of the day, it's just golf and it's not going to ruin the rest of my life. So
Yeah.
just had to play it as a game, and that's all that it was.
Yeah. So you talked about the nerves, have you felt, when you turned professional, did you feel ready, prepared to turn professional? And, obviously there's a lot of nerves. So how have you, navigated and, dealt with the nerves, since turning professional?
Mm-hmm. I feel like I was ready to turn professional. I wasn't sure if like I'd be ready to play in front of like millions of people, like stuff like that, but I was definitely ready to play at the next level.
Mhm.
Uh, my kind of motto for playing with nerves is just to hit it harder.
Okay.
I just feel like, especially like these last two tournaments, like we've had like all like the signage behind us and everything like that. And we've had like a bunch of people come out and watch us play. And like I stand on the first tee with like basically like shaking from nerves because I was like, oh my gosh, like what if I hit it wrong? But at the end of the day, I was just like, you just got to hit it as hard as you can and let it fly.
Yeah. So just tell me a little bit about, the start to your professional career and, how has the start to your professional career been? Like, what are some of the things you've learned? What are some of the things you've, dealt with and, have to navigate, throughout your professional career?
Yeah, so kind of just like it's been a little rough, I guess, just transitioning from college to professional and like having to play different courses that are like I'm unfamiliarized with, I guess, a little bit, and like having to travel by yourself has definitely been a little rough. But I think just like you kind of just have to get out there and do your own thing. I
Hmm.
guess it's like one thing that I've like kind of come to realize. Um, like you also just have to like make a couple friends and like stick with them and like get yourself out there and like play practice rounds with them more or like travel with them more and like kind of set it up a little more better. Um, but yeah, dealt with anything? I haven't really dealt with anything yet. There's definitely been like, especially like in the Australian tour, there's kind of like a little like cliques of groups. So I'm just kind of trying to find myself and like where like my friends sit and like where I should sit and stuff like that. That's the only really thing that I've kind of dealt with at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. So you mentioned, rough start to your career, dealing with traveling, and, learning new courses. Just tell me a little bit about, dealing with a rough start to your, start to your career and just navigating, the travel by yourself and learning new courses and just how all that, how that has been for you so far.
It's been interesting. I think a major thing about travel is like having a plan of like exactly where you're going to go and like having it early and being prepared for yourself. Um, but
Hmm.
I think traveling has been like kind of rough just because like well also like visa wise and like having a visa to the US has been kind of difficult because of like the P1 visa and stuff like that, and like the kind of restrictions people put on that, or like the US government puts on that, has been kind of rough. So that's why I haven't played as many of the WAPT tours that I have wanted to play just because of that. But in Australia, it's been great.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, it's not been great, but like it's more of like just being able to like realize like whether you should drive to a tournament or like whether you should fly in and then drive out, because a lot of the tournaments that we've played here so far have kind of been regional tournaments. So it's like whether you fly into like Sydney and then drive like 3 hours, or like whether I drive from like the Gold Coast and drive like 7 hours and like have my own car and stuff like that. It's been a little difficult.
Yeah. So just tell me, are there any friends you've made, throughout either your college career or your professional career, both here in the US and Australia? And have you experienced, any differences, in your professional career, both, from the US and Australia, or has your professional career mostly been, the same experience, both in Australia and the US?
It's been a pretty similar experience from in comparison to like the US and Australian tour. I've made quite a few friends actually in the US and both in Australia. Like
Mhm.
I made a friend, her name's Victoria Craig. She's originally from Ireland, but she lives in
Okay.
Brisbane now. We
Mhm.
kind of just linked up at the last couple of tournaments and kind of just became friends. But like also like Grayson Blount and like Natalie Go and stuff like that I've met in the US, and like I've met through college, and I've met now on the WAPT, and I've kind of just been friends like that. So there's been a good couple of girls that I've connected with and have been able to like make friends with and see at tournaments and see a familiar face with.
Yeah. So just tell me about some of the things you've learned, both professionally and personally, throughout the start of your professional career.
I've kind of learned that like at the end of the day, like it's just a game, and like it's about the long game essentially. Like it's not like in the moment that you're gonna be with. I think that if you put the work in, like results will come sooner or later. And you just kind of have to have the persistence to be able to like keep going and like keep putting up every day, every hour, keep going and being able to put the practice in. And obviously results will come sooner than later.
Yeah. So just a few more things I wanted to talk on, Grace. So just tell me a little bit about your game. What are some of the strengths and weaknesses of your game? What are some of your favorite clubs to hit, in your bag? And then just tell me about some of the things that, you usually work on, or some of the things you're currently working on, in your game right now.
Yeah. So I feel like my game personally, I have a really good long game and putting game. I do definitely need to work on like my chipping and everything like that, and get a little more variety in like my chip shots, and stuff like that. But like I love to hit my driver. I also really like my pitching wedge and my 8 iron, and stuff like that. But yeah, what I'm working on right now actually is just coming through the ball a little more and getting my legs to work a little more instead of just focusing mainly on like my arms going through the ball. So just trying to get my full body through the ball, and it'll hopefully give me a little more distance than what I have right now.
Yeah. So two more things I wanted to talk about, Grace. Just tell me about, what are some of your favorite things about playing golf, and what are some of your favorite memories that you've made, from getting to play golf. Golf has taken you, from Australia to the US. So just tell me a little bit about, how golf, has changed your life, and just, some of the memories you've made, from playing golf.
Yeah, so I've made a lot of memories. I think like obviously like my whole college career has been kind of like my highlight of my life so far. I've made lots of friends, been on lots of trips, made lots of memories. I remember like this one time, like my freshman year, like me and my friend Patricia, like we drove down to Florida for like a
Mhm.
couple of weeks and like just stayed there, just playing golf for a couple of weeks at like a bunch of different random courses. I think that's gonna be like one of my favorite memories. And then plus just like getting to meet people that also don't play golf
Yeah.
has been great. Like my
Mhm.
best friend, she rides mountain bikes and does
Okay.
that professionally. So that's really cool to be able to like have someone like that in my life and like see how like she works through her like sport and I work through my sport. Like we learn a lot from each other. Um, but yeah, I think just getting to live in the US for like the time that I did, and getting like the college experience has also been like one of my favorite memories and golf experiences that I've had to date. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. So finally, Grace, just tell me about, your professional career. What do you see going forward for your professional career? Tell me about, any goals you may have for your professional career. And then, maybe like a 5-year plan. What do you see, as you continue, with your professional career? Do you have goals set, for the next few years, or are you just taking things, as they go, with your professional career?
Yeah, so hopefully next year I can qualify for stage two and then get absence tour status
Okay.
through
Have you
the
ever have
LPGA
you
Q
ever played
school.
in yeah, have you ever played in Q school before? Or are you planning to play it next year?
Yeah, I played in Q school this last year and I think I missed the cut by like two
Okay.
shots. But that was like my first time playing it and I thought it was a great experience. Like I learned a lot, but also like I could have played a lot better. So I'm kind of excited for next year and to be able to like go back out to Palm Springs and play the courses again after like being able to play it this year and like know how everything works a little better. But like this next year, I think I'm just ready to experience like the Australian season and everything because I've heard such great things and everything.
Hmm.
And then obviously I'll be back in the US and hopefully I can get in that top five for the WAPT and hopefully get to second stage qualifying
Yeah.
automatically and then stuff like that. But hopefully in the next 5 years I can fully qualify for the WPGA and take
Hmm.
off my career fully.
Yeah. Sorry, I said that was my final question, but I just heard, you said you played in Q school, so I want to talk about that. I think that's a good talking point. Just tell me about your experience. Said, was it this year you played in Q school, or was it last year?
Last year, yeah.
Last year.
Oh, I
Just
know
tell me,
it was this year, I guess.
it was
Yeah,
this year?
this year definitely. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so just tell me about, playing Q school. I've talked about to a lot of players, whether they be on the WPT or just, I've talked to a few players who played in Q school. Just tell me about your experience playing in Q school and, how that was for you. Because I know it's in California. There's like 300 plus
Mhm.
players and only, the top, whatever it is, 100, make it onto the next stage or something like that.
Yeah.
And, it's in California, three different courses. It costs a lot and, you're dealing with, the desert heat, in, California, which I'm sure you're, used to the heat, growing up in Australia. But overall, just tell me about your experience, playing in Q school and just, how that was for you. And, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a great experience in my opinion. Like
Mhm.
obviously the three different courses, they were all very different courses,
Mhm.
which was a good test of golf in my opinion. I got out there I think 3 or 4 days before and I played like one course at a time and got out there a little early and played the courses a little early
Mhm.
instead of playing like the 3 days directly before the tournament. Yeah, but the desert heat honestly wasn't really a factor for me because like obviously playing golf in Utah during the summer and everything like that, it's kind of already the desert heat. Um, and plus we were riding in cars, so it wasn't like anything bad, which was also very good. But it was top 90
Okay.
that qualified to stage two. It's like so like you play 3 days and then you have like a cutoff, I think like 100 or something like that. And then it gets like a second cut at 90, and those 90 move on to stage two. I definitely think like the first day I was playing good. The second day I was a little nervous and kind of got a little score focused. I think it kind of messed me up. So in the future, I think definitely just go out there and stop thinking about score and just play golf at the end of the day. And
Mhm.
hopefully that golf will make me move forward to the next stage.
Yeah, and then a lot of the other players who I've talked with, they say Q school, is one of the most stressful, weeks of the year because, if you play well, it can set you up, get status either on the Epson tour, maybe even the LPGA tour. So it can set you up for the next year or even maybe the rest of your career. But just, tell me how did you deal with, the stress that ensues, with Q school? How did you deal with that?
Honestly find it that stressful. Like I get
Okay.
that I guess for like a lot of US players, it's kind of
Yeah.
stressful because I guess it's like kind of like mainly like the one path that they can go through. And obviously it's super hard because everyone around the world wants to play it. But like for me, like I always kind of knew that I was going to come back to Australia and like have a tour here that I can play on,
Okay.
and stuff like that. Like obviously, like you put pressure on yourself to play well at Q school because you obviously want to make it to the best of the best. But I just think that at the end of the day, like whether you make it or not, it isn't going to define like how you play golf or anything like that. I just
Yeah.
think it's just like, oh, like if you play good for these 3 days, then like obviously you can have a good chance at setting up the rest of your life. But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, like there's other options that you can take to still make money as a professional golfer.
Mhm. And then I will let you go on this final question. Grace, just tell me about, what do you enjoy most about golf and just what has golf, meant to you and your life so far?
I think golf is a good outlet for me just to get away from a lot of things because obviously
Mhm.
like I feel like a lot of girls don't play golf, so it's kind of good to get away from like a lot of the drama that girls bring and stuff like that, which is kind of funny. But it's always been like kind of an outlet for me just to go away, be calm, and just go putt or like hit balls and like either like get one of frustrations out or like just like meet new people and like have the opportunity to like grow like your friends and family and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So it's always good just to get out and like have that extra little thing that you can go do by yourself and enjoy it.